So you already know inside the Seizing Happy Hybrid community, we have a readers circle. This is for all my fellow bookworms inside the community who just love to nurture their mind and their soul with learning. And I select phenomenal books that either come recommended from other business owners or from different companies that I've been associated with in the past in different capacities. And this month, the book that we were reading through is just fire. Okay. The best part of being part of this reader circle is that I get to pull the journalism card and bring the authors of the books on the podcast. And so you and I get to read these books together inside the readers circle in our Seizing Happy Hybrid community. And then you and I get to interview the authors together because I use the questions that you give me. So if there's anything in the book that you read, that you loved, that maybe you were like, man, I wish I could go deeper on that, or I didn't really fully grasp this particular topic, you give me those questions and I bring them with me to the interview. So it's a lot of fun. And it's really interactive and it's super satisfying to get to work together, to interview and have conversations with these amazing authors of these transformational books. And then this month we read The Power of Enough: Finding Joy in Your Relationship with Money by Elizabeth Husserl. And let me tell you, what a book. You know, I really like to have books that are actionable. I don't just like information for the sake of information. I like information that comes with integration opportunities, that comes with guidance on how to actually apply the knowledge that I'm acquiring through the book or the podcast or the workshop or whatever it is. And Elizabeth does a phenomenal job with this book at giving us the pauses in the reading to be able to completely integrate and apply what we're learning. So Elizabeth is Colombian-American and she's a certified money coach. She's also the co-founder of Peak 360, which is a wealth planning firm. And her new book, The Power of Enough, which I have loved, it really goes deep into addressing the importance of examining your relationship with money so that you can create real change and dive deep into how to develop an embodied approach to wealth. And she really goes into the difference between wealth and money and the distinction of the two, and why sometimes getting those two terms convoluted actually keeps us back from creating the financial dream life that we all desire. And so she talks about the importance of recognizing that true wealth is not just about accumulating resources, but about cultivating a sense of vitality and purpose. She has been on some really phenomenal platforms like the Typology podcast, The One You Feed, Mentally Stronger, which has over 1 million monthly listeners. She's been featured in author Q&As on Yahoo Finance and the New York Times. So of course, we're going to have her on the Chats with GiGi podcast. Of course, we're going to have her as one of the authors inside our Seizing Happy Hybrid community that you get to enjoy the books with me and then give me the questions that you want to ask the author. So I really hope that you enjoyed this interview as much as I enjoyed putting it together with our fellow members of the Seizing Happy Hybrid community inside the Reader Circle and having this conversation with Elizabeth, who is just absolutely amazing. Just before I hit record, I was sharing with Elizabeth how I've had a day today. I'm like at a backup office. There was a Wi-Fi outage in my entire like area. And right before we hit record, I just said, we'll just leave it to God. And all of a sudden, I just feel like this is going to be the best podcast ever.
That's what it always happens, right? When we surrender, life happens. So 100%.
But that is most definitely not what we can do with our money. Or would you say that surrender is also part of our financial freedom, power?
Well, so I think surrender is very much part of our wealth journey. And I think it's really important to distinguish the fact that money and wealth are different things, right? So I think we start there, because if we separate the two, money is a social technology, money has very particular functions. Wealth is a state of being. So when I put
Mm.
it in that perspective, Gigi, do we surrender into states of being? We do. And sometimes when we do that, that's actually when the magic occurs. So I'll just start with that distinction.
Yes, please. And so how do we get into that state of being of wealth when we're feeling like we don't have enough money? You know, like
Right.
we
Yeah.
don't have enough sales. I have a lot of entrepreneur listeners, and I have
Yeah.
a lot of clients that I coach in the business space that are often telling me like, I want to up my sales by 30% this year. I need to make more money in the business or whatever. And that's definitely the opposite of what you're saying. That's not living in a wealth state. So how do you
Right.
differentiate the two? How do
Yeah.
we get into that state?
Well, so the first thing about getting into the state, it's almost like I see your body, right? You want to go into it. So it's a very somatic experience. And I think that's one of the key pieces that I bring to my readers and to my work with people, is that wealth is not something to accumulate on paper. Wealth is an experience to be had, right? And that's very different, because when I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I have a lot of clients who are entrepreneurs. And so when we sit down and we look at the numbers and we do financial planning and strategy, I'm always asking, what's the why behind our numbers? What's the why behind our growth? And growth is really important. Like my two values, Gigi, is depth and wealth. They can coexist, right? But we have to know what's the depth beneath our business planning, our numbers, so that it has meaning. So that's what first and foremost. And then the other thing, when I say let's separate money and wealth, is a lot of times I tell people, let's start with your relationship to wealth, and then let's add in the money and let's add in the numbers, because they have a role to play. And when I say let's separate the two, you know, financial stability, aka where money lives, is one slice of the wealth pie, right? And so imagine, I like the imagery of like petals on a flower or spokes on a wheel. Like, so each one of them is a slice. So people like pie, it's a slice of pie. And financial stability is one of 12 that I work with. And all of them add to our experience of wealth, right? So it's financial stability, protection, safety, physical health, connection, belonging, purpose, understanding. All of these are areas that make up our human needs. And I say that really slowly and on purpose, because I feel like if we just accept that all humans have the exact same needs, but how we satisfy our needs is unique and personal, then it starts to get really interesting and exciting and creative. But we put aside this idea of being needy and be like, no, I'm a human. I have these needs. I can get really creative on how I experience wealth in all of them. And I'll come back to the financial stability and growing my business in it. But let me make sure that I'm also, which is so much your message, Gigi. You can't just grow the business. You have to take care of the entrepreneur beneath the business, right? And so when you start to see wealth more holistically, then we're taking care of all these areas of wealth as we build. Uh-oh.
There you are. I don't know if that was you or me.
You dropped off and you popped back on,
Okay, that's so
but
weird. It's okay. So it's still going. I had you until, because for me, what it did is your video froze. I had you until you were talking about the satisfaction of the wealth and incorporating the numbers. So I think
so let
give
me
me
take us.
that, yeah, give me
Yeah,
that whole
let me
answer
take.
again.
I'll
Hmm.
give you. Oh, because it was so good, right?
It was
So
so
we're good.
good.
So good. But we're gonna try. I think. What I wanted to emphasize, Gigi, this is your message, right? Your message isn't just growing businesses, but it's taking care of the entrepreneur beneath the business, right? And so that is exactly what I'm talking about. Is that when we're looking at wealth more holistically and looking at these other areas that make us feel wealthy, where I can experience well being. That's what it is. It's a state of well being. physical health, understanding, purpose, belonging, connection, touch, all these things that are important to us, we can make sure that as we build our businesses, it's not at the expense of these other areas in our lives, right? And so when we start to then say, okay, where are my areas that I'm wanting to grow more? Maybe it is in my business planning because I have these goals, but maybe it's also in connection or participation or purpose. When you look at the resources at the beginning of the year and you do your business planning, and I use resources more widely, it's money, it's creativity, it's connection, right?
Mm.
It's resilience, all of these resources that we have access, then we start to say, okay, what am I channeling to each of the needs that I'm satisfying? Because as I said before, our needs are universal. The ways we satisfy them are personal. And what I like to tell people, Gigi, is that when you're making your business plan and you're satisfying these different needs, make sure that you have an equal list of what are my financial monetary strategies to grow my business, to add more clients, to increase sales, and what are my non-financial strategies. Because if we have clarity on our non-financial strategies to increase our sense of well-being, we loosen the dependency that we have on money as a society. And that's when we start to find agency and empowerment, right? So that's the piece. It's like we all know what it's like to be in relationship and have relationship styles that just don't feel good, right? Are you an anxious attacher? Are you an avoidant? So it's the same thing with money. And so if I know how to satisfy my needs with money and without money, that's the true financial independence that we all crave.
I love that. And I also love, by the way, I just want to say one of my favorite things about the way that your book is structured is that it is so actionable. Like you don't
Hmm.
just explain these things, but you actually give us the steps to follow, to apply, to integrate, and to make it a part of our
Yeah,
day-to-day life, our decision making. And so I absolutely love that because I feel like sometimes we learn so much. And as entrepreneurs, we're
right.
like, yeah, personal growth. And we're like reading all the books and listening to all the podcasts, but like there's
Yeah,
no steps to actually make it part of our day-to-day life.
right.
And you definitely give us that in the book. And one of the things I love is this concept of an abundance mindset, right? Like everyone's
Yeah,
like abundance mindset, but you have a really particular take on the
yeah,
abundance mindset and a very important element that it leaves out when it comes
yeah.
to the implementation part. So give me a little on that.
Yeah, and so, because I've been on this journey for 20 years, right? So it's so actionable because I've been practicing this on myself and with my clients for a really long time. But I always I love the abundance mindset, but I would struggle with it. I'm like, what am I struggling with? Right. And so when I brought it back somatically to my body, I'm like, if my intention is to help people experience wealth, not just accumulate it, I was like, okay, what do people do? We push scarcity away. So literally, we take our hands up and we're pushing scarcity away and we're trying to grasp onto abundance, right? So we're holding on. And if you look, Gigi, both of those require effort. And I was like, oh, there's no surrender in that, right? And so part of the let me just relax my grip for a second and lean into meaning and fulfillment. Abundance starts to take a different spin where it's not about always wanting more to offset feelings of lack, but it's
Mm.
in fact getting super clear of what's the more that would add meaning and fulfillment in what I offer, in my services, and how I earn money, in my experience of wealth in the world. And that's the key component, right? That makes a distinction between, is it conscious consumption that's filling you up, or is it empty calories? And we all know what that feels like. It doesn't quite nourish us. And so that's the component of abundance in a vacuum still doesn't make sense. We're still grasping. But abundance connected to fulfillment and meaning, it's like I can feel it in my body as I say it. That is the power of enough. It's like the well of worthiness that just starts to bubble up from within.
And what a beautiful way to have that well of worthiness and the way that it overflows into everything else that we
Yeah.
do. I feel like that's
Yeah.
such a powerful foundation, even for the way we sell, the way we price our packages, the
Yeah.
way that we approach our clients, the way that we support
Yeah.
others, both in business and outside of business. I feel like it just overflows into so many different areas of life, right?
Yeah. Like I was talking to a friend client yesterday, and she's like, "Oh yeah, Elizabeth, I had these income goals for me in 2025." And then I was listening to your book and I was like, why was I feeling so stressed about this income goal? And she's like, the reality was that I was setting myself to do things that were going to keep me overly busy to make sure I met that income goal,
Mm.
taking away from the areas that I really wanted to focus on to bring a sense of purpose and participation. So she's like, I was listening to you, Elizabeth, and I went back to my spreadsheet. I'm like, what do I really need to make and why? And what are the areas that if I were to earn money, would make me feel like I'm earning my income goal, but I'm also meeting these other needs. And that's the synergy, right? Like that's when money becomes magical and our experience of wealth is just deep in our bones and we feel fulfilled, right? Like we will never retire from that.
And that is another powerful conversation. I was
Yeah.
speaking recently with a financial advisor who was talking about the concept of retirement, right? And how she was like, a lot of people, the concept of retirement has been given to us as that thing you do when you're tired and old and you just go wither away somewhere. And that's why so many of us are like, I'll never retire. I'll never retire, because the idea
Yeah.
of retirement is to wither someplace elsewhere with no purpose and nothing else to do. But we will never retire from our desire for purpose and fulfillment. And so, what if we could just attach that to the way we live and the way we structure the elements of our life, be it in business and sales, but also in the things that matter more than business and sales,
Yeah.
right?
Right. When we get to redefine what success means, right? And it's a
Mm.
more sustainable path instead of a sprint because we're exhausted in this country. We're sprinting towards this retirement goal. Like, where's the why? Where's the power of enough? How much is enough? And so, you know, like and I'll just say retirement is actually a pretty new modern concept, right? It was invented in the 1930s when Social Security came into being because people were living till 67 and they were being retired at 65. It was a very short period of time, which was really that like old person stage. And somehow that got kind of like integrated into our cultural conversation, right? That is financial independence. But to your point, it's a huge identity crisis for a lot of people because they feel that their value has gone away. And so I do think we retire from certain things, and people do retire from a W 2, and maybe that's when they become an entrepreneur, but we'll never retire from our creativity and all these other human needs that we're in relationship with every day.
Yeah, that are truly where our joy and happiness lie, right?
100%.
And
Yeah.
so let's talk about wealth mandalas. Let's bring that into the conversation because you just talked about creativity, and I feel like that's a great segue into drawing our wealth mandalas. So break that down for us.
Yeah, so Wealth Mandala, the word mandala means circle in Sanskrit, right? And it's a path towards joy instead of suffering. And so I really use that intentionally, Gigi, because I feel like, not everyone thinks of their relationship to money with joy. And I really am here to tell you that it can be joyful. And what I'm doing with the Wealth Mandala is really making a point and making that separation of money and wealth. And so it's like, okay, put your relationship to money aside. And we have many other tools to look at that we can talk about, but let's look at your relationship to wealth. And so, literally, it's a one-page mandala that you can print for free from my website. And I did this over the weekend with my daughter, my teenage daughter, my husband. You take a color, you look at these different needs, and you color on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 feeling very fulfilled in this different need. So, again, need for understanding or purpose or freedom or physical health, safety, leisure, touch, curiosity, creativity, financial stability. And if you're feeling low or a lack in this need, right, you can color it very little. If you're feeling very fulfilled, color it all the way to the brim. And what I tell Gigi is that once you're done with coloring, I actually have my daughter somewhere, is you look at it and it's this beautiful flower, right? This is the flower of your life in a moment of time. And I always tell people appreciate it for what it is, right? Come with a sense of grace and love and non-judgment. That's what it looks like. Go to the areas that you feel very fulfilled and ask yourself what is working there, and really
Mm.
give yourself one of those like pat on the back moments, like, yeah, you do know how to fulfill your life, right? And just like take that in, integrate and digest that. Then go to the areas that potentially you feel lack or poverty in. And that's a little bit of an edginess there, that we feel poverty in different ways that is not just financial. And let yourself go to that area and be like, huh, what's happening in my world in that area that's making me feel lack there, right? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Do I have a list of questions or things I need to tend to? Am I going through a physical health moment that is scaring me? Like or did I just move to a new community and I know no one, so I don't belong, right? Let yourself be with what's impacting it. And then I tell people, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I do New Year's wealth mandalas, and I choose two needs every year to address where I can channel more resources to. And again, both
Mhm.
monetary resources and non monetary resources. And I do that with my family every year. We get to choose two, and we know as a unit what we're working on, and we become each other's best wealth friends and money friends because we're making decisions collectively on where our resources are going.
I love that. And then I wonder, we're always doing so much inner work, right? We're applying
Yeah.
these things, these tools and these techniques, and we're just trying to break the generational traumas of
Yeah.
finances and all these other things. And I'm an immigrant, right? And so I was
Yeah.
born in Cuba, a third world country pretty much, and lacking of literally everything. And I wonder, as I grow and I do the learning and I do the work and I do the healing and I work with coaches and other people and experts. Sometimes I wonder, can it really truly be healed? All the money trauma that we have that we carry on from generation
Yeah.
to generation, can it truly be healed, or is it just like an endless process that some part of it's still going to end up with my kid and their kid and their kid? Like, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, and I got chills when you just said that, Gigi, because it's such an important question, right? And I would say, yeah, can it truly be healed? I don't know, but can it be integrated? Yes. I think there's a distinction there, right? And you talk a lot about this in your podcast, which is the importance of integration, which basically means bringing awareness to your ancestral lineage. Like my family's from Colombia, right? And my grandfather was from Austria, who left the World War during World War II. Like there's a lot of displacement in our lineage. So what I like to tell people is that do spend some time just writing your story and knowing your story, and then look back and be like, okay, what are those little pieces that I want to pick up? I'm like, oh, yeah, both my grandparents were entrepreneurs. One went through bankruptcy twice and picked himself back up with a family of six, right? I'm like, oh, I got resiliency in my bones, right? I'm going to take that with me. My other grandfather was a CPA. I'm like, oh, I feel comfortable with numbers. I'm going to take that with me, right? And do I have to heal their past? No, but I can be aware of how their past influenced me so I don't have to pass that on. I mean, that is why I wrote the book. I wrote the book because I was committed to not passing on an experience of scarcity to my daughter, right? I came from families that had experienced scarcity. Then my mom and dad created something different, but still felt scarcity. And I was like, why? Why are we still feeling scarcity if it's no longer part of our reality? How do I do my work so I don't pass that on? So that was my commitment. I think everyone can make their commitment. Are they going to solve everything? No. But what's that one commitment to the next generation? Focus and celebrate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just that level of awareness of saying, I am committed to healing this part. I mean, even a 1 to
Yeah.
2% improvement in healing our past. I don't want to just use the word trauma, but like all the baggage and the nonsense that we carry on, right? Like even just a 1 to 2% improvement on that is enormous for our
And
children.
to talk about it with them, like for example, like one of my money triggers is wastefulness, right? I know where it came from. It still, irks me. And now with my family, one, we laugh about it, and two, we have a mistakes line item in our budget, right? Because I married someone who can sometimes not track and make financial mistakes, and it drives me crazy. And my daughter's like, Mom, remember, we have a mistakes budget. I'm like, you're right, we're human, right? And so this is a conversation where it doesn't mean the triggers go away, but the more we talk about it, the less triggered I feel, the more I can laugh about it. I feel less lonely in my internal experience of it. So I think that's the piece. It's like choose those things that you're like, this doesn't serve me anymore, and it's not going to change overnight, but I'm going to be a little bit more courageous in facing that one thing, and I'm going to take a little bit more of a vulnerability risk and share it with my intimate circle of like, hey, this is what I'm working on. And that's the other piece about, my book, Gigi, was like these mini moments of questions, like asking questions throughout the book, because we don't talk enough about money.
Well, that
And
was my next question. Is
yeah,
we're talking about it because we're currently on this path, but like you said, you have your family unit to bring with you, right? And
yeah,
money, the conversation of money is still such a social taboo. People are like, well, nobody wants to talk about how much they make or how much they charge. People are scared to charge for their own services and products. And like
yep,
debt is such a big word. And like everybody has it, but
right.
nobody wants to talk about it. And it's just like, how
Yeah.
do we remove that weight from our shoulders, and how do we give permission also to the people in our circle to say these are the conversations I want to have with you and that we should
Yeah.
be having?
Oh, I get chills again, Gigi. Such great questions, right? It really is, again, separating money from wealth. That's the really key piece because we can talk about our experience of wealth, right? And we can talk about wealth and money without the use of numbers because that's when it starts to get hard, right? When we start comparing ourselves. Did I make this much as you did? Did you make more? Do you spend more? Do you have more in debt? Oh, that makes me feel better, right? And so when the numbers come in, the comparisons click off. And so again, if we say, okay, money is a technology. Money has four main functions, right? It's an exchange, it stores value, we use it for credit. And so when it has those four functions and it's a social technology that can sometimes replace our experience of trust, right? And that's why it's so like wishy-washy. We're like, oh, if you don't know me, but I flash you, $100 bill, you'd be like, oh, she's trustworthy, right? That's how we have created relationships. And so if we put money aside for a second, knowing that as a technology, social media is a technology, and we know it can be used for good and it can totally take us down that rabbit hole, but it's a technology that has its wisdom and it has its shadow. But that is not what defines wealth. And if we start to do that work, we can talk about wealth in ourselves, in our family units, with our friends, and we can find a way into talking about wealth and money in a way that's less charged and less comparative because it really is an individual journey if you let yourself do that and you let yourself imagine that.
I also want to talk about the physical parts of
Yeah.
wealth and money and integration. And you talk about it so much. And I felt when I was reading your book, I really loved the way that you bring this physical element to healing our money trauma and to
Yeah.
expanding in our wealth and in our abilities financially through physical movement. Let's talk about
Yeah.
that because that is, I've never seen that connection made before. And I know how
Yeah.
powerful it is, but the way you break it down in the book is just
Yeah.
superb.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what I'm making as a distinction is kind of like in these conversations around scarcity, we've talked about like sufficiency and abundance, right? It's saying I have enough. But what I want to bring to the table is this idea of satiation, of feeling satisfied where I feel enough. So it's a different somatic experience to what you're saying. And so what I like to tell people is that um, I mean, it's so simple, and I put it in the beginning of the book because it's so simple and I want people to practice. And I haven't, like, it's been amazing. The feedback I've gotten is I'm inviting people to recognize those moments where they felt satisfied and fulfilled, where there was enough and they felt enough to simply stop, swallow, and consume that moment of satiation, knowing that the more we teach our body to feel fulfilled, it compounds like interest compounds in our bank account. And that's the key piece because there's been so much research, Gigi, that we do have scarcity brains. We are wired to seek. And so let's just like accept that, right? And that's what kept us alive. We're wired to seek calories, we're wired to seek shelter. And so our brain is like scanning the world for safety and being like, how are we going to survive? And our body has wisdom to tell our brain, hey, we're safe, we're good, right? We feel enough, we feel satisfied. And so it's this conversation between our mind center and our body center that can start to shift our experience of wealth. But we have to let our body have space in our day to be like, oh, yeah, that felt good. And again, the easiest way is go back. We all know what a good meal feels like. So
Mm.
start to take those little units of satiation or moments of meaning. Another author calls them memory dividends, right? Like your portfolio pays dividends. So these are memory dividends. But then take the extra added step of Closing your eyes, swallowing. It's a second of integration and just watching that moment of meaning travel all the way to your toes, telling all of your cells in your body, we feel enough. And walk in the world from that place and see what happens.
Mm. This is so yummy, and I feel like I could talk to you all day. And there's so much more in this book that I want to get into, but also I'm not going to give it all away. And so, the one last question that I have for you is for somebody who is listening to this episode right now, who is ready and they're like, okay, step number one, what is the
Yeah.
one piece of advice? What would you say is step number one for them to take? Because there's so much we've
Step
talked about.
Yes, there's so much, but step number 1, and based on our conversation today, Gigi, I would say give yourself a 30-day satiation challenge, right? That's not gratitude, not what you're thankful for, but 30-day at the end of each day, write 3 things that satisfied you. Which moment time stopped. We all know what satisfaction. Write them down for 30 days, then go back to your journal after 30 days. It's a freaking free exercise, and then go through and be like, what are the patterns? What am I doing that brings satisfaction? How do I heighten that? How do I maybe reinforce that and start to show your mind that your body actually knows how to recognize enoughness. And then from there, again, the conversation opens. But if you just start to exercise that muscle, it's like going to the money gym, right? Or the wealth gym, is start to practice that satiation muscle for 30 days, see what happens.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us
Mhm.
on the show today. I can't wait to talk with you some more offline and do great things together.
Yeah.
And it's been such a pleasure to enjoy this book. And I'm still in the integration process. Thank you for writing this. It's amazing.
Thank you, Gigi, for having me. This was amazing. Enjoy, everyone.